What's up, everybody? My name is Indy, and the gentleman next to me is not Jay Powell. That is Mr. Cheese Whiz himself. That's Tom Haynes. He's a community manager for what is it? Community and social media manager. I can't see it so small on my screen. For Powell Group in Indie Game Business. And welcome to Indie Game Business. Today, Jay's not going to be here because there's people on his roof making a whole bunch of noise pounding. I don't think that's probably true. He's probably just kicking back. He's probably not even watching us. He's probably just kicking back. No, he's got some roofers at his house. But today we got Fieldman Robinson, and the topic today is transmedia. So welcome, Fieldman.
Thank
Good
you
to
for
have
having
you
me.
all the way from Dubai, right?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep. Well, Dubai via the UK. I'm born and based in the UK, but now live in Dubai.
Awesome. Okay, so Jay's first question always is, how did you get into the video game industry?
Okay, so the first full interaction was in 2014. Prior to that, I was working for Sony Pictures, and I ended up working at Sony PlayStation. I got into that role as basically from a referral. At Sony Pictures, I'd been managing the accounts for PlayStation and Xbox on their video service. And I ended up going over to PlayStation to work on their video platform, PlayStation Video, and their music service, PlayStation Music. Through that interaction, my time being there, I obviously started to work with some of the games teams, working on collaborations and promotions around some of the new games. So if it was a game that had a movie or a TV show spin-off, we'd work to do collaborations to promote both forms of media. Same goes for the music service. So that's my interaction in the gaming side of it initially. After that, I then went back to film for a bit and joined Lionsgate Films and worked for Universal Pictures. And then I eventually ended up at a telco company, a big conglomerate, working as a product manager and partnerships manager for gaming and entertainment. So with that space, what I was doing is building partnerships so that consumers could pay for their services using their mobile phone monthly bill. But I also was lead on developing products, and I helped build 3 gaming platforms in Austria, Italy, and Sri Lanka, which are still live now to this day. Following my time there, I went on to join a games company named Yodo One, where I started to work on the development of licensing a portfolio. So working with different IPs and brands to build collaborations in existing games or help to develop new games based on those IPs and brands. And that's pretty much the nutshell of the story. I mean, if going further back, I've been a fan of video games since the late 80s when I was very young. And, you know, it's been a dream come true to be involved in this space as well. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So you've just been in the games industry for a little bit, little tiny bit, yeah. That's awesome.
About
Okay,
10 years.
10 years. Nice. So let's talk about transmedia. How do you define transmedia in video games?
Well, I actually have some slides that could cover some of that. Should I bring those up or?
Yeah. Let's see. Did you want to do a whole presentation there and just share?
Yeah, I can. I'm sharing now, so I can go through some of it.
Okay.
So as you can see from this presentation, Transmedia is adaptation of a single story into different experiences on different platforms or formats. So it covers many different areas. It can form one whole narrative, so there can be mini narratives within that universe. So as you can see from the diagram, it can be comics, books, novels, films, video games, etc. All contribute into the overall story world. And if I show you the next slide, a great example of that is something like Star Wars. Obviously there's plenty of movies, shows, animation, etc. You have things like The Witcher, which was from a book originally, but you have the video game, you have the live series, comics, animated series. There was even an opera for The Witcher. So those are some of the examples. It's different to cross media. cross media is a case of where you have one particular story, but then that same story is retold in a different format. And example of that would be sorry, not Cyberpunk's Transmedia, but something like The Watchmen. So you've had the comic, you had the live action movie, live action series, which is a continuation of the original story, but then there's been the recent animated series, which is the same story as the comic and the live action movie. So there's a big difference between the two of those. So yeah, so that's how I define transmedia: one major story narrative, but it is added to by other narratives on different formats and platforms.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. My next question was the difference between transmedia and just adapting an IP into another format.
Well, yeah, pretty much what I've just gone through with the cross media. Cross media is the same story but different format. Whereas transmedia it could be spin-offs, it could be other stories, etc., focused on one character or another world within the overall universe of the original story and narrative. Yeah.
Okay, so why do you think games are a powerful medium for launching or expanding transmedia experiences? Hey, there we go. There's the slide right there.
Yeah, yeah. Um, So I feel that games are really cool for transmedia. This is my breakdown from research and my experience, both working in the film industry and the game industry. So with games, you have a built-in lore or a narrative and a backstory, and that lore plays a crucial role in enhancing the experience for gamers. The other aspect of that is a universe that can be explored within games. When it's a passive form of media, so like just a movie, you don't get to interact directly because you're passive. You're just watching it play to you. But within a game, you actually take control. You're part of the story, making things happen. And that, as I mentioned here, player agency, that helps build fan bases. That it builds the engagement and the loyalty to come back and want to be involved in that story or see the next part of that story. Um, and as I've already alluded to, there's the audience engagement, which is key for all games because they're interactive, and then also the storytelling can be broken down into different modules. So one can be, if we're taking something like Uncharted, one part of that story is looking for clues and items within the story, and then the next part is a chase. So those kind of things overall contribute to the overall story, but there's stories within the overall story, so they're modular within that experience. So that's why I think games are really, really cool for transmedia experiences that can then be branched off into other areas.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of like how I would explain video games to my dad. It's like it's a movie, but you are the main character and you
Yeah,
influence things, right? Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, and the results of that you can see like top executions of transmedia. You'd say like something like Fallout in the last few years, or even Minecraft this year. Those spin-offs or TV shows, movies, drive up the engagement for the actual game itself. So that's why it's really, really cool if you can find the right team or you can work with the right people to do a good execution based on that original IP. Then yeah, you can then drive audience engagement. You've seen examples of that with like The Last of Us recently as well, and there's many more to come. This is at the moment for Hollywood, gaming seems to be the go-to trough to make new concept or make new movies at the moment because there's so many rich IP out there. I think was it yesterday or 2 days ago the mini trailer for the cast for Street Fighter was released, so and that's already got people engaging and talking about it because there's already a brand loyalty and interest in the Street Fighter franchise already. So
Right. It's like a built-in audience. And regardless of if
yeah,
a movie is good or bad, there's a
yeah,
built-in audience for it. And it also is like brand recognition. It reignites that
exactly.
for the
Yeah,
game.
yeah, yeah. And that's what you just said is exactly what my company works on, working with different IPs, brands to, bring those IPs into the gaming sphere to engage newer audiences, even if it's like old or legacy IPs. There's a couple projects I'm working on right now where there are older legacy IPs, and those brand owners or licensors want to attract new users, and as well as their loyal fan base, get them to engage in those IPs. So that's why it's really, really cool.
Awesome.
So if I just go back, and yeah, as I've mentioned, with Transmedia, they're extension of the existing media, and it's not just marketing vehicles because it's integral to the player's experience. And then you also have, gamers spend a lot of their time watching other media based on the original IP, the original game IP. So that's why examples like Fallout, Last of Us, etc., are really cool. The top companies obviously embrace engaging with the fans and building roadmaps to invest in that area as well. And you're seeing that more. I think a recent example is the K-pop Demon Hunters. Netflix are already very excited about all the potential and opportunities they now have with that IP, and they're talking about games as well as sequels to the movie sequels, maybe a TV show, etc., etc. But games is definitely going to be a major part of their roadmap, I imagine. So yeah.
Right on. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. One of the biggest examples you can have of this is Pokemon, which is actually the biggest, highest grossing media franchise in the world. Started off from a couple games, but you can see it's made over 150 billion in revenue in its lifetime. A lot of that's from merchandise. See, there's a lot from gaming, but it's sprung off into other areas of movies, TV shows, as you can see here, other games, VR games, trading games, and they all fit within the overall Pokemon universe, so to speak. So that's why the potential can be, if you can get it right, plan it out right, and work with it. And I think that's more, as we go forward, that's going to be more and more important to developers to think and consider transmedia, because the competition is so fierce out there. How are you going to stand out? So yeah. So I'll just go to the next one. In terms of challenges, there are lots of challenges. I've highlighted a few. I think working and deciding on the canon moments is very important, because the fans want to see that the creators of the spin-offs or the additional content actually have a passion and actually understand the game and what the users or the audience wants. So an example of that is the Uncharted movie. I'm a fan of the Uncharted game series. I saw the movie and I was disappointed because I felt it didn't really reflect all those key moments in the game series. The bit I did think reflected it was the falling out of the plane sequence, which was from Uncharted 3. I thought that was really, really cool, but there's other elements that just didn't feel like it aligned with the actual game franchise. And then
So
I think another...
I got a question here about that. So what do you think the biggest mistakes that studios make when they're trying to expand into transmedia? Is it that, or are there other big mistakes?
There's other mistakes, and which I'll go on to one in a minute. But I think that one of the key thing is actually working with the creators sometimes of the original game IP, and working closely with them and understanding what the key audiences actually enjoyed about the game itself. As you said, there's a key reason why these games and IPs have got big loyal followings, and I think it's really, really, really important to understand the nature of that. I think also there may be conflict sometimes within film studios. Film studios may be on a deadline to produce and put out a film. Obviously, film production costs a lot of money. If there's delays, that's going to be a hole in their balance sheet. So they may be pressured to push forward and do something like that and get it out. And then I think there's a big problem in doing that, because if it disappoints the audience, then where can you go from there? You'll have to wait many, many more years until the air is cleared and maybe do a reboot. And that, to me, leads to avoiding shovel media. So, shovelware, we are aware of that term. It's like when large quantities of something is shoved out there, but it's not aligned with the quality of what the audience expect. Sorry, I think an example of that over the last decades, maybe not recently. I haven't seen a new Superman movie, but what DC movies were and the games were over the last decade. Prior to that, you had the Arkham games, which everyone loved, but in more recent times, the Suicide Squad and the Flash movie and the Just League movie, a lot of people were disappointed in those because their expectations were already high from games like Arkham Asylum or other movies like the Christopher Nolan Batman series. So when it's not aligned, and then people eventually start dropping off and thinking, I'm not sure, I can't really engage or invest in this as much. And that can be a tarnish of the brand. So you have to ensure that the quality is good and not just rushed out and just put out there like that.
I can see how that would affect the whole franchise, because and then the next movie goes out and people are like, I don't know if this is going to be garbage or not.
Exactly. I think a great example of that is something we saw with Transformers. The first five, I think, made 1 billion, but that, in my opinion, the quality got worse in those films. And then Bumblebee came out, and I thought it was actually a really good film, but it made nowhere near money, and near that kind of money. And I think that was because the trust from the audience was like, I'm not too sure about this. I mean, same goes for the animated one last year. I saw Transformers One. I thought that was the best Transformers movie since the Transformers movie in the 80s, and but it didn't perform. And I think that's because people may have been exhausted from the Transformers brand and IP in terms of the movie, not necessarily all the cartoons and the TV shows, but the movie, and were a little skeptical. So, you have to be careful what you're doing. So, then from this with Transmedia, it's also important to understand the monetization. So I'm sure there may be other podcasts talking about this, but licensing is one of the major aspects of this. I like to think of licensing as like a McDonald's Happy Meal. You have a licensor. So in the case of Minecraft, Mojang and Microsoft own Minecraft. They license out the Minecraft IP to make toys that could be in the Happy Meal for a set period of time. McDonald's being the licensee, they're the party that was given that right to make the toys and activities based around the Minecraft movie launch. Um, for developers, there's many benefits, and for IP holders, the rights holders. So developers, you can elevate the status of your brand and your game by using an IP or a brand that's really well recognized and has got a big fan base. Um, and then for developers who are IP holders, of course, it's going the other way. So you're lending your IP out to other people or other developers or merchandise, and you can get additional revenue stream. But again, it's up to you to decide how you want to manage that, who you want to license it to. All those extra elements are very important. So I'll go to the next slide. And for licensing, there are numerous commercial models. So you have royalties, royalties plus minimum guarantees, and flat fees. Royalties, are basically when a payment is made to the company for using that IP, using those assets. So, in the case of, say, Pokemon, it'd be like using a character like Pikachu. You have to pay the Pokemon company for using that character for that period of time, etc. Um,
So, in your
royalties.
experience with who you've worked with, what is the most common one that you guys have done?
So the most common one is the second one, royalties with a minimum guarantee. So most licensors or owners of the brand and IP want some sort of payment upfront to cover themselves for use of their IP or their brand. So that's the minimum guarantee. They're usually recoupable in terms of royalties. So once you start earning it, you can pay it back, and then additional revenues on top are shared with them. So it's a split. There's usually a revenue share. So some goes to the owner of the license, and then the developer keeps another portion of that. The rates or the percentage depends on the negotiations. Some rights holders are more flexible. depending on how they value the IP. So if it's something, say something really big like let's say Harry Potter, Warner Brothers will probably want a decent, substantial upfront payment for that, plus a revenue share.
Mm.
Something that's much older or not being used so much recently, they may not want as big a payment up front, and they may be flexible on the percentage that they receive, because they may see it as a way, this is a way to reinvigorate our brand or this IP. So there's a bit more flexibility. And also it depends on the proposal. If the proposal is for a really cool game or something unique, then they may be like, okay, we can look at this and we can find something that's more cost effective for the developer because they believe in the project. The third one is a flat fee. This model is just a case of the developer pays one flat fee to the owner of the IP, and that's it. All the rest of the revenue and royalties and profits go to the licensee, in this case the developer. So that's the one most developers want to get, where you just pay one fee and then that's it, and you would get all the returns. So, but that's a lot more rare to get. So, one of the other areas to consider with licensing in this transmedia area is the rights management. Different franchises may have split rights, or different management authorities looking after or creating different elements of the brand or the IP. So a good example I like is the Terminator. I'm a big fan of the Terminator franchise. The first two movies are owned by Studio Canal, and then the other movies in the series and the TV series are owned by different studios. So if you want to use elements from Terminator 1 and 2, you go to Studio Canal, but it's also actually managed by another agency based in California. But if you want elements from the later movies, you may need to go to a different studio to ask for elements out of those ones. Another aspect to consider is, for say something like Terminator, is the likeness of Arnold Schwarzenegger. He has approval authority over using his likeness in any games, and it may cost quite a bit more. The same applies for other films and TV shows. In some cases, the studio manages the likeness, and in some other cases, the studio doesn't have a final say. You may have to get it from the creator of the show or the movie, or you may actually have to get approval from the actors to use their likeness, and that may take time because you have to then go through their agents, and there's a lot of elements that can slow things down, but sometimes it's really worth it. Another thing to consider is like the music rights. Music rights are split sometimes between different record labels in different countries, and then you also have publishing rights and masters rights, which can be split as well. So music can be complicated as well, but it is something to consider. There are different entities out there that can manage these on behalf of studios. I'll just see the question.
So basically, for example, Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he signed the contract for the movie, he specifically said, "You have to come to me to use my likeness and other things." Right? That's probably in the contract, right?
Yeah, it'd be if for a contract for a game, or even if it's an integration or a crossover event. If you want to use it, you'll have to get his approval. It usually goes through his agent or one of the managing parties, and they'll try and get it for you. But he says he will ultimately say, yeah, maybe, yes, I'm happy to do that, but this is going to be the cost of doing
Right.
that.
No, but what I'm saying is, when the actor signed up for that movie and they had their contract, he'd like put that in the contract, whereas some other actors might not do that.
Yeah,
right?
that's more commonplace now.
Okay.
They will agree to those kind of rights going forward, unless the studio says, a studio controls all the rights. But it's more beneficial to actor if they have that status to be able to say, I want to control my rights, those kind of things. Same applies to sports as well. For example, the NBA. If a developer wants to make an NBA game, there's the two sets of rights you have to get. You have to get the rights from the NBA itself for the teams and their brand and their jersey and everything. but then you have to get the NBA Players Union if you want to use the likeness of players, or if it's just an individual player, it may just sit with an agency that the player is signed up to. So there's lots to consider there.
Right. Okay. Well, we've got a couple questions coming in. So did you want me to, you want to field the questions right now, or you want to wait until the presentation is, till you're finished with it?
We'll go through it at the end, and then I can field all those questions. That's okay.
Yeah, that'll work great.
Okay. So another area, and this is, I mean, I've noticed the question is mentioned about small studios. I think this is a really good opportunity for the small studios, is public domain IPs. So a public domain IP is something that's available to the public. There are rights of IP that may have expired, been forfeited, or waived. And this tends to happen with older IPs at the moment. So you've seen things like Winnie the Pooh, Steamboat Willie. They have become public because it's a certain period of time. I think it's 100, or it's over 75 or to 100 years. I think Batman is another big one that's coming up pretty soon. And what you can do with those is you can then go and make a game based on that particular character, but you do have to be careful. If you make a version of that character that is too similar to the most, the one that's very established, so something like Winnie the Pooh, you have the Disney version of Winnie the Pooh. If you was to make a game based on that one, you probably have problems because Disney will come after you. Whereas a good example is the Winnie the Pooh / horror movie. That Winnie the Pooh is nothing like the one we're used to from childhood. Same goes for the Steamboat Willie. Earlier this year, you had the film Screenboat Willie, nothing like Steamboat Willie Disney version. And that was announced like straight after the rights became public domain. So it'd already been
like they were working on that before the rights, because it came out really quick right afterwards.
That's correct. Yeah, like it came out, I think it was announced like 2-3 weeks after the rights became public. So they were already working on it. And I think, I think studios can actually start doing things like that. You've seen it before with, like, there's many different versions of the Jungle Book in films, or Peter Pan, those really old IPs, and they're available to everybody, so you can be creative with those ones as well. There's other things like ancient history kind of characters, whether it's like Greek gods, Roman gods, those kind of things. You can use those ones that are well known, but there's no license fee to be paid to anybody, so that's an option as well. I'll just go to the next slide. So strategies for getting the game and transmedia. I figured that there's 5 key areas. I think the first one is identifying the core of the story, in the world from which the IP will be based on, or the transmedia will be based on. Is it magic based? Where is it set? Is there a societal structure? Is there religions, ecosystems? Star Wars is a perfect example of that. The rebellion and the republic and all those kind of things. Then there's the Force. Those kind of elements are in there. Another aspect is the lore. Does your idea or premise expand the universe? So an example of that is there's an upcoming game from Destiny franchise, a mobile game called Destiny Rising, which will be expanding on the lore of Destiny itself. Next, I think it's character driven. So Arcane is a great example of that. The show, you have League of Legends, but that show focused on some specific characters rather than the whole world. Is more focused on those 2 characters, which allowed other audiences, one, to find an access point to League of Legends itself, and then focus on those characters and maybe build affinity to those characters and understand where they fit in the wider League of Legends lore and world. Obviously, choosing your platform is really key. A lot of people think of film, TV shows, animation, but doing whether it's AR, VR, mobile, or even a podcast based on an IP is really important to deciding what's the best first step to move forward. And then the pitfalls, kind of mentioned this before, is avoiding inconsistency and having good quality control over your IP or working with an IP that's established, making sure it's of good quality, those kind of things. I did mention before, Transformers, even Star Wars itself in recent times, there's been a lot of different content for both, especially Star Wars, and the content has not reached the expectations of the audience. So that has become problematic. This is something I've put for any of the audience listeners to have a think about in the future. But to make your own 1 year pitch of an IP or existing IP or your own one, and design an extension like your own transmedia of it. So, example would be, say, Stardew Valley, have a cooking show based on Stardew Valley, or an Elden Ring radio drama, those kind of things. I think it's a good way to get started in the conversation of like working on transmedia and thinking a bit longer term about your game's IP or an existing IP and what you would like to do. Because at this moment, as I mentioned earlier, there's so much competition out there in just the game releases. Do you have a plan or a roadmap to expand on that game in the future? For example, there is a project I'm working on at the moment with a developer where their game is already out, but we are looking at help. We're supporting in trying to develop animation for them, and we've connected with several animation studios around the world. We're talking with them at the moment to develop out an animation that will support the game. So their whole plan originally, when they started developing the game, was not just the game itself, but to build out a whole ecosystem that starts supporting itself, as it is in the image I put at the beginning of the presentation. So that's something I think people should think about. Tips would be pick a core platform, watch which kind of format you want to use. It can be experimental, like TikTok puzzles or even LinkedIn puzzles or something along those lines. And what kind of monetization do you want to use? Is it going to be affiliate sales, branded ads? Think carefully about those, but also creatively. There may be something people are not aware of. So yeah. And this is my key takeaway before we get into the Q&A. I think games are really ideal for transmedia. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put this presentation together. The worlds are immersive, and there's so much you can do and different angles you can spin off into and do really cool things with. I think the tips for the studios, if you've got big financial resources, by all means, you can license from well-established Hollywood and TV and animation IPs or comic IPs. But, be aware, some of them are very expensive, but some will cost a lot less than you think, especially ones that, you may have enjoyed when you were younger, but there hasn't been anything new for them in a while. The studio or the owner may be saying, like, we'll be flexible on this one if you come up with a really cool concept, or if you're willing to be more flexible and offer them a larger revenue share. They can be flexible, so it's always worth asking. And another aspect, maybe for smaller studios, is to think about lower cost transmedia. So it could be a web comic, it could be an audio drama, or even a Discord RPG. Those are less financially strenuous. So I feel that, a small studio can be creative with that and try something really new and cool. I think there's a show on Amazon. It's an animated show. I'm trying to remember it now, and I have watched it before, but it started off as a chat between friends, I think, who started off doing Dungeons and Dragons or something like that, and now it's an actual show on Amazon. So those are different aspects and tips I think you can use, and that's my takeaways for today. So thanks for that. I will just close that, and then we can go to some of the questions.
Awesome.
Vox Machina, that's the one. Vox Machina, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. First one. This one is from James on YouTube. For small studios and indies looking to license IP, what are the red flags that are going to put off the licensor?
The red flags are, obviously, if your concept is not good, come up with something original, something compelling. I mean, most licensors, yes, they're obviously going to look at what kind of financials you can offer them, and obviously a small studio can't offer that. So this is why it's really, really key to come up with something really creative that whets their appetite. I think also good as a good way to look at it is to look at the platforms that may not be as popular. So, for example, I'm working with a VR studio. The financial terms that the licensor wants are far lower than what they required for a console or a mobile game. It was just it was like night and day what they were asking for. So I think that's the one thing you can consider. But yeah, red flags would definitely be the biggest thing is to be original. If you don't have that originality or a concept that's interesting, they will say, "See you later." Yeah.
Hmm. So, what's the first thing a game studio should consider before even taking their IP, considering taking their IP into other types of media?
Well, what their audience base is for the original game, what its reach is, what regions actually as well is really key because you want to be able to target that audience in whichever region or demographic is important, um, and then also look at trends of what's happening in that medium that you're considering. So, for example, animation is changing all the time and the costs for development with the use of AI are getting cheaper. But then there's aspects you have to consider with using AI. Are you infringing on someone else's license because AI takes pulls different information from other existing content? So I think yeah, looking at the different mediums, what a cost impact, looking at the legalities, if there's going to be impact from that, is a key thing. But I still think there's many, many opportunities in this sphere when you're looking at IPs or your own IP to take it forward. I think ultimately being original is the biggest thing. If you can come up with something original and different from what's out there or unique, then cool. I think a good example is I was speaking to one publisher and they said to me, say if a studio came to us with a concept for a Spider-Man game, we wouldn't want it to be a typical Spider-Man game. We'd be looking at it being a Spider-Man game where you're Peter Parker doing photography around the city and doing things like that, doing the actual day job of Peter Parker rather than doing all the swinging around. That could be secondary. And I thought, that could be a cool concept that a studio, an independent or small studio, could actually look at. Original ideas like that can stand out as well. If you can make it fun or really in a cool way, then you probably get more traction with a licensor.
I like that. That's like so like a game where this is totally different. A game where you're Clark Kent and
Yeah,
you have to do stuff and not get discovered as Superman. Like you're in
exactly.
situations where people are watching you and you got to make sure that nobody sees you become Superman. That's funny. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the flip side of that, how should someone with a book or a film or a show or something how should they think about turning that into a game?
So I think with them again, the same, but in a similar, you have to consider who your audience is, what your numbers are, how well it's doing. But even if your audience isn't massive, think about how you can reach a new audience and what you will enjoy, what you think the audience would like um, out of the aspects in the world you've already created, what could appeal to the audience you're targeting. So, for example, The Witcher is a good one. It started off as a book, then you had the game, which really blew it up and made it a well-known name. Since then, it's then gone on to the other areas. You've got the TV show, which is much more adult themed to reach that audience and make it a big thing on Netflix. But now you've got the different animation series, which also targets another audience. So I would say think about when you've got an IP that exists. How can you amend the design or amend aspects to reach your desired target audience? So a good one. Let's just say Batman, for example. Batman reaches everybody, pretty much everybody now. You've got the Batman movies, which can be Christopher Nolan versions or the Zack Snyder versions. You then got like the old Batman show from the animated show from the 90s, which everyone says is a classic. I love it. But then you have younger ones like what's it? I think it's called Batmobile, the Batmobile show for young kids, where Batman is all cute. Then you've got Lego Batman, which also meets a different audience in a comedic way. But Batman is on almost every conceivable level you can think of in different mediums. You could have a Batman radio show and someone talking like they're Batman 24/7, investigating crimes and those kind of things. That's a different angle, So being creative in that way and trying to reach your specific audience is the key thing to think about.
Yeah, but they could have a game where you play as Alfred, and you got to make sure it's like a simulator. Anyways, sidetrack.
Yeah, because Alfred's in the cave most of the time,
right?
and he's usually guiding Batman where to go and what to do. So, that's the man. It's basically the man in the chair job.
Yeah,
so,
he's in there cleaning the Batcave. It could be like a job simulator show. There we go.
Exactly.
Whoever's got it, there's a pitch right there. So, how do you know if your IP is ready for transmedia?
There's no 100% way. Of course, it helps if you've done great sales on your game or your existing IP. That always helps, and then you can use the data to figure out what the audience is, where they are based, all those aspects. But there's sometimes where an IP doesn't necessarily do well straight away, and then you take it to a new medium, a new platform, and that expands it in a way you could never have imagined. There's been, for example, The Walking Dead starts off as a comic. A lot of people don't know it started off just as a comic, but the TV show expanded that in a way that was completely unexpected. I don't think anyone realized that show was going to be as big as it was, and then build spin-offs of the show, And even now, there's two separate rights for that. You have AMC that own the show, right? So if you want to make a game based on that and have the likeness of the actors, you have to work with AMC. But then if you want to use the other version, which is the comic one, you have to speak to the comic book owner, and that usually goes to the creator who made the original comics. So there's different ways. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world, say, if you've made a game and the sales haven't been the best. This could be this new medium that you're using could be the reintroduction for consumers or users or enthusiasts to that game. Even like what the slide I showed earlier, you saw the uptake of people playing Fallout based on watching that TV show. You saw this. I mean, The Last of Us has been, oh gosh, how long has that been around? Since PlayStation 3? And it's been re-released, 3 times already, or 2 times? And then people go back to it once the show came on, because it's quite engaging. So I don't think there's any specific metric. Of course, it helps if you've got good numbers on the original medium where it was released. But, if you try something different, it may pick up somewhere else, and it may be in a different market you didn't expect. I think one aspect that, an example, you can see of this is something like Squid Game. Now, Squid Game being on Netflix, Korean show, I don't think anyone expected Squid Game, based as a Korean show, to be this massive global hit that it is. But having Netflix there as a medium of distribution to go around the globe, it took off. That would not have happened 10, 15 years ago, because Netflix is not where it is now. There were people who probably may have had an interest, but it would be very niche, and it may have come on like a DVD or something that a friend picked up when they went to Korea or something like that. But having that platform and that kind of access now changes the game. So, you may hit audiences that you don't think in different markets. I don't think anyone in Korea thought, it was going to be so big in North America and all these other countries.
Yeah, just like that created a whole genre of things, right? That's awesome. Okay, well, let's get another question from James Coote on YouTube. Is being small in itself, he's talking about being an indie dev, a problem, and how much does developer experience make a difference?
Okay, it's not a problem to be small, but it does make a difference in terms of experience. So one of the things, especially the major IP holders and licensors, they want to see like what your track record is, what you've done, it as a studio, or it may help. It will definitely help, like if you've done stuff before, working for other companies with specific teams. That's why you can see certain new companies that set up, if they've got a lot of experience from team members over many years, they're able to get seed round funding or funding to help develop a game. If you're coming from a place where you don't have any of that, it will be much, much harder, I'll be honest. It'd be very tricky. So yes, definitely some experience is gone. The more experience you have, the better chance you've got to move forward. And if you've got experience with working with IPs, that puts you in a higher level than someone who hasn't worked with an IP. That's the honest truth. I know it's not what you will want to hear, but it's the truth. Experience does play a part, and if you've worked with IPs before, that plays a major part too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so follow-up question: how can indie teams navigate complex licensing issues without a massive legal team?
You can work with a company like mine. You can obviously, sessions like this and other information is out there to learn how to do it. You will need some legal at some point. Obviously, me being working with, I do know different legal people, different countries that can help and advise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for example, there's other aspects you have to consider, like insurance. Is the licensor going to require some insurance cover? And insurance can, depending on what the IP is, it can cost a lot. But then you might have a publisher who is well aware of that, and if they're going to back your project, they might give you the funds to cover those insurance costs or other costs, the licensing costs. So these are all aspects to cover, and that's why it's really important to consider which IP you're going to go for. If, like I said, if it's a major one like a Star Wars or Dragon Ball Z, as a small developer, it's unlikely unless you find a publisher who's like, look, your concept is great, we will cover this cost and we will help support you with legal, all those aspects, because your job is really to focus on making a great game, a great experience for consumers, not to have to deal with legal nitty gritty. Even myself, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know all the I know enough, but I don't know all the aspects for the legal aspects. So even me, I will have to, when I'm working with companies, I will bring in contacts or lawyers that I know who can cover that, or someone who's an insurance expert who can cover that. So it's not, it shouldn't be a complete put off, because there are ways to move forward. For example, there's one other project I'm working on which is based on an IP that's on the Cartoon Network. I can't say, but we've got some proposals from developers from around the world. One of the developers is in Zambia. We have a developer here in the UAE who's put proposals together. I've got another one in Europe who put a proposal together, and it's been reviewed by the licensor, and they're happy with it. The thing is, now we just need a publisher to help support, because some of these studios don't have the publishing experience to put a game out there. So different aspects like that need to be considered. But it's definitely an opportunity out there if you find the right thing, or want to move forward.
That's awesome. Can you explain a little bit more in detail what your company does specifically?
So yeah, sure. My company is it's a business consultancy business, but we're more like a matchmaking service. What we do, we've got access to thousands of different brands and IP. So obviously, my experience in film, Hollywood, access to most of the film studios, but there's also food and beverage brands, sports brands, and IPs, whether it's football teams, national sports associations. I've worked with NBA, NFL before. Those ones, we work with those guys to try and do more in gaming, because one of the things is, especially with more standard brands such as food and beverage, they don't realize the full potential of gaming in some sense. Yes, they get it where you're playing a mobile game, there may be ad pop up. They understand some of that, but they don't understand like the other aspects of using those brands and the reach. I mean, a lot of them are starting to understand things like Roblox, but not other games as well. And it's just, gaming is the biggest medium in the world because it incorporates music, live action, engagement, all at the same time. some of them are clocking onto that and want to get into that area themselves, but they just don't know how to. Or in my case, in some of the cases with some of the brands we work with, they want to engage with more developers and do more in the Middle East where I am. So I will try to find developers in this region, to work with, who want to do something with those brands or something really cool. I'm not limited to just this region. I've got a studio in South America I work with at the moment on a project as well. So I think that's the thing. Well, that's not the thing. I think that is the thing. I will work with all different parties and players to try and match them together to build something cool. That's basically what I look to do. Try and build something cool with different developers and entities and brands and IPs from around the world.
That's awesome. You said that they starting to understand Roblox. Is Roblox really a thing that you can start to understand?
I mean, to
Roblox
me,
is like, you know,
well, yeah,
I
I mean,
understand it.
yeah, it's a strange one. I think I first came across Roblox many years ago when I was in Brazil, and I think 8 years ago, and a friend's son was playing. I was like, "What is that?" you know. And now it's like we all know how big it is, but what a
Yeah,
lot of them, because that's become more mainstream, they start to understand that, but they don't. Some of them don't see the potential of the other games out there that are huge, and could, get exposure to massive, massive audiences if they would consider it. So yeah.
that's awesome. All right, let's get to another question here. We've got 8 minutes left from
Hmm.
WGJ Chili. How about voice actors or specific phrases? Like an important phrase
Yes.
on a movie, I'll be back, to add it to a
Yes.
video game. Not sure if it was answered, but yeah.
Yeah. No. So this is a good example of the stuff I mentioned about Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you wish
Hmm.
to use his whole voice, it's going to cost you. It's definitely going to cost. If you want to use like Sylvester Stallone, it will cost you. Um, what some of them studio, even the licensors in some cases, recommend is don't do that route. Do something inspired by that character,
Hmm.
or don't do the same exact line if it sounds exactly like them. Do something that's slightly different, or inspired by it. You don't want to end up, as a small indie studio, you do not want to end up with a lawsuit later on. That's
Right.
my advice to you. And the same goes sometimes with the music. Sometimes the music, depending on who it is, it can be very expensive to license. So some licensors actually will tell a studio and advise me, tell the studio to make something inspired by that theme music that I think there was a Terminator game that was worked on. It used to be by a studio that used to be down the road from where I lived in London, and the agency manager said, "Yeah, we just told them make the theme music like it's similar, but it can't be the same because it will take forever to license it and it costs a lot."
Hmm.
And so I think the same applies to actors voices. um you can sometimes get away with it with voiceover actors, sometimes, but it can be tricky, and I
Hmm.
would try to avoid someone who sounds just almost exactly like it, unless the licensor says it's okay. I wouldn't go and do something straight away without asking the licensor. That's the key thing. If the licensor gives it a green light, you're okay. If you go and do it and without asking the licensor and you put it out there, you could face big trouble later on down the line.
Right. What's so interesting is Arnold Schwarzenegger in Conan, right? They just dubbed his whole voice, but not realizing that his voice is going to be known by everybody, and it's so iconic, and they just
Yeah,
dubbed over him. You know,
yeah,
that's crazy. Also, you were talking about like to do something similar. The game 7 Days to Die, their song, I was like, man, I know that theme music. And it's very, very close to like 28 Days Later or
mm,
whatever the other zombie. Very creepy, but it's very, very close. It gives you that same vibe. All right, let's
yeah.
do another question here. Who do you need to reach out to find out about license agreements?
Me.
Yeah, there you
uh,
go. There's your self promo right there. Let's do your self promo. If you
yeah,
want to do your email, contact info, any pitch, go
yeah.
ahead and pitch yourself.
Yeah, sure. So my company's called Vertical Voyage, based in Dubai. Uh, you can just go to the website, www.verticalvoyage.com. my contacts on there. You can email me at Fieldman at Vertical Voyage. And then yeah, I'll be happy to like communicate with you. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can look me up on LinkedIn and send me a message there as well. Outside of myself, obviously you can try and get in contact with the companies. It will take you a long time. But yeah, I think it's probably easier if you go through someone who actually has the contacts. It makes it a lot easier because many of the studios, if they don't know you, have had no relationship with you, they will receive lots of emails all the time. So they want to go through people they actually know. That's my suggestion. But then once, if you manage to get a contact through someone else, you may know someone at a studio who's got the access to the licensing person or the business development person, by all means go for it. One of the things I say about a lot of people and in the film business or other businesses, we like flattery, Send a note on LinkedIn saying, "Oh, I'd love to take you to a coffee if you're in the same area to talk about this," or say, "I've seen your work. Could I have a chat with you?" A lot more people are actually open to discussing projects and ideas with you than you realize. And I only say that because that was one of the things that helped in my career. When I was working for Sony Pictures, the actual president of Sony TV, I had a coffee meeting with him, and he told me this. He said, most people don't realize it, but just ask someone for a coffee and tell them their work is great. He said, you'll be surprised by how many people want to say, okay, yeah, I'll tell you about this, because it's our egos. So yeah, that's a good way. Use LinkedIn as much as possible. Also go to different events. If there's an event in an area you're going, whether it's a gaming event or a licensing event or even like comic book stuff. I've been to Comic Con here in the UAE. I've been to an event in Saudi, and you meet some people there that you'd have no idea were connected to what you want to do, and then you just make that connection, and something can blossom from there. So those are my suggestions. Don't be afraid to approach people, whether it's online, using Discord or other channels. A lot of people are more friendlier than you realize. Yeah.
That's awesome and great advice. One final question: what game are you playing right now?
I'm playing a few. I'm playing Hi-Fi Rush because I never got around to it before because I've got a young daughter and a young son. I play a bit of Disney Solitaire every now and then with my.
What level are you on Disney Solitaire?
700.
Oh my gosh, you got me. That game is, oh my gosh, it's good. It's
Yeah.
good. And then I love all the little stuff that you have to cycle through to
Yeah.
get. But yeah, Disney Solitaire. Okay.
And my daughter my daughter plays with my wife. She plays what's the other Disney one? Dreamlight Valley. I've been playing Lego City with. I didn't realize I could do 2-player, so I've been doing 2-player with her on Lego City at the moment. So she seems to like that a lot. So yeah,
That's awesome.
that's me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on here. This is great. And it's been some amazing, you're slamming roadcraft at the moment. Nice. This has been some great, great conversation. We really appreciate you. The conference is coming up, everybody. It's coming up soon. Keep an eye out. What's the dates, Tom? 16th and 17th? 17th and 18th? Man. 17th and 18th. That's when it is. And this is about running and starting and having an indie game studio. This is going to be an amazing conference. If you're not in the Discord, please join our Discord, discord.gg/indie game business. And if you go to Indie Game Business and you don't have it yet, if you sign up for our newsletter, you get a full list of publishers and you also get a full list of investors. So that's good information for you. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back next week, next Friday. We are here next Friday, aren't we, Tom? Believe so? Yeah. Yes, sir. Tom from the back end says, yes, we are. And I want to have a kitchen behind me next time. We're in an Airbnb. I don't know if you guys know this, but we moved from Florida to Oregon, moved back to Oregon. And so we're in an Airbnb right now. So my office is the kitchen, which is fine because the fridge is just right there. And I only got to do is lean over and grab something from it. But thank you so much. And thank you so much, Fieldman. This has been great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bachelor party for Tom. Nice. Well, that's good for you. All right. Thank you.